Hey guys, welcome to my long-term review of the CB500X from Honda after about 7,000 kilometers. Let's go. So I already did a first review when I just got it after 1,000 kilometers or something like that. This is now a longer term review. I've had it for about a year. I've only been able to ride about 7,000 kilometers because of all the restrictions that we've had the past year. But I've still been able to hit some wet roads, some dry roads, some off-roading as well, some grass, some gravel. So I think I've got a pretty good idea of how the bike behaves also in winter when it's cold, and right now in summer when it's more than 30 degrees out in the shadows. So now I think that I have enough experience with the bike to be able to tell you some of the things that I think Honda could have done a little better, maybe for the next version of the Honda CB500X perhaps. So I'm going to tell you three major things that I noticed that I don't quite like about the bike. The first one is the lighting. The lights are full LED, front and back. That's very nice. It doesn't use much energy. It's very good. The problem that I have with it is that it's not bright enough, especially obviously at the headlight. The difference between the high beam and the low beam is basically inexistent. It's basically the same, and it lights up the roads maybe 10-15 meters ahead, but that's not enough to ride at a comfortable, normal speed on roads when it's fully dark out in the middle of the night. So here is a comparison between the headlights of the bike and a small tiny flashlight that fits in my pocket that is smaller than the palm of my hand. And as you can see, it's pretty much equivalent. Anyway, I wish that the lighting was slightly more powerful on the CB500X when it comes stock from the factory. Now there is a possibility to add some additional lamps at the front to connect them through the proper wiring so that it switches when you switch the high beams here and low beams, or maybe an external switch if you prefer to do that. This is probably a solution that I'm going to opt for because I really think that it's a matter of safety to be able to see far ahead in front of yourself, in front of the bike when you ride at night. This is true on road, but it's also true for off-road. If you're trying to do some off-road at night, it's better to have powerful lights to see all the different possibilities that you have so that you can choose your line accordingly. And if you can't see anything, you won't be able to find the right line. The second thing that I'd like to criticize about the bike is this, the windshield. More specifically, the buffeting that comes from the small size of the windshield. Now, I think that this default windshield, just for now, ignore the part that is on top of it. The default windshield, I think, is pretty good aesthetically speaking. It's very nice. Larger, it would be too bulky. Smaller, it would kind of look ridiculous in my opinion. So I think it's the right size aesthetically speaking. Now, functionally speaking, in terms of aerodynamics, it's not quite there yet, at least for me. And I'm not that tall of a rider. I'm only 175 centimeters tall, so that's basically average height for Western Europe. And the flow of air comes directly into my helmet, and that creates a lot of buffeting at the helmet, and it creates vibrations left and right and kind of slaps you in the face all the time, and it creates a lot of additional noise that is not necessary, and it's frankly annoying. It's not too much of a problem when you do this for half an hour, but if you plan on riding hours and hours and hours, you know, the entire day, then this is going to start becoming very, very, very annoying. So the temporary solution that I found to this is to add a little piece of plexiglass with this piece of aluminum in between. It's just basically the cheapest mod that I could find on Amazon. It was about 25 euros. It's, I think, in my opinion, the price that you should pay for it. There are much more expensive variants that are probably a little better from GV and others, but it's more than 100 euros. And 100 euros for a piece of plexiglass and a piece of aluminum is way overpriced in my opinion. So I'm sticking with this for now, but I hate it because you can't see anything. Basically, this huge piece of aluminum in the middle that is connecting the stock windshield with the extension, it sits exactly where I want to look. When I'm seated on the bike, I want to look exactly where this thing is, and it's very annoying, and it's a bit dangerous even. But aerodynamically speaking, it really does help with reducing all the buffeting and so the noise and the fatigue that comes from it. What I wish Honda did with this bike is to propose the regular size windshield or an extended windshield that would have maybe 10-15 centimeters added to the stock one, and that they would allow you to choose between that one or the extended one when you purchase the bike brand new or as an aftermarket part. That would definitely solve the problem of poor visibility with this added flexiness, which is not necessarily desired because it's going to create cracks. Eventually, it's going to create cracks here at the mounting points because this heavy piece of aluminum is just going to make it wobble much more than if it just was the default glass. But hopefully, some manufacturers are going to step in, see the problem, and provide a solution for us.
I've been acting like a wild man, sleeping like a child. You're so luminous and vibrant, I'm always in bloom for you. Always in bloom, always in bloom for you.
Now, the third thing that I want to complain about in this video about this bike is the suspension. More specifically, the front suspension. Now, you have to understand that this bike, before I start criticizing the suspension, this bike is designed to do half off-road and half on-road. So it makes sense that Honda fitted a suspension system at the front and at the rear that kind of sits in between. And don't get me wrong, it does the job. I've gone to really cool places off-road. They're not super hardcore. I would not call them super hardcore off-road places, but they're decently hard in places, especially considering that the bike weighs 200 kilos. I've gone to places with this tank bag, with this tail bag, sometimes a bigger tail bag, so laden with a backpack, high altitude, big slope, loose gravel, and it still works. The one problem that I have with it is that it bottoms out way too fast, especially the front. The rear is okay, but at the front suspension, it tends to bottom out really quickly. And in order to avoid that, you need to slow down, but you need to slow down a lot. I don't consider myself a super crazy off-road motorcyclist. I just like to ride at a decent speed, not too fast, but not completely crawling either. And with these suspensions, it's not really possible to ride at a decent speed. If you ride at around 50 or 60 kilometers an hour, then you're going to bottom out the suspension. The tiniest rock is going to bottom out the suspension. So there are a few aftermarket parts that you can buy to remedy this problem. Most notably, there's the one from Rally Raid. It's a bit expensive, but I think it can fit the bike pretty well, and it's going to give a good result in off-road. Now you have to consider that because this suspension is kind of tuned to be in between road and off-road use, it's actually very comfortable on road. I've found it very comfortable. This bike overall, I'm saying it again because I said it in a previous video, it's pretty comfortable. I like to ride on it hours and hours and hours without stopping, and it's not really a problem. My back starts hurting a little bit after a few hours, but 3-4 hours in a row, no problem. No problem. So if you aim to do mostly road with this bike, I don't think you need to change the suspension. If, on the other hand, you prefer to do a lot of off-road and to go slightly faster in off-road, then you might want to consider upgrading at least the front suspension.
A castaway on unknown shore, although a stranger in this continent, I'm always in bloom for you. Always in bloom, always in bloom for you.
One more bonus complaint for the road, just before I leave you there. The power of the bike is by design 47.5 horsepower, which corresponds to the A2 license in Europe. You have a power limitation with the A2, and then when you pass the A3 license, then you don't have any power limitations. So it makes sense that this bike is limited to that power, but sometimes, in maybe 10% of the time, I wished it had a little bit more power. Probably something around 70 horsepower would be ideal. And maybe the Transalp, if they bring back the Transalp from the dead, maybe the Transalp is going to be the CB500X or something like that, because there is a spot in the market for that. BMW has the F850, the F750. Yes, we have the BMW F750 GS with 77 horsepower. Then we have the V-Strom 650 from Suzuki that develops 71 horsepower. We also have the Kawasaki Versys 650 that develops 67 horsepower. The KTM Adventure 790R that develops 83 horsepower, and the Yamaha Tenere 700 that develops 72 horsepower. They all have a bike in the lineup that is in between the big liter bike and the half liter bike, which this is. And I think that sometimes it would be nice to have slightly more power, but most of the time it's perfectly fine. You can just tour the world with it, unless you have a passenger, at which point you might think that it's clearly underpowered. When you're riding solo, it's fine. So that's it for the review. I hope that you enjoyed it. Overall, I would say that this bike is perfect for my needs. It's really, really good for what I want it to do, and I think it's almost perfect as it is, straight out from the factory. I think that with a few modifications that are not too expensive and not too hard to implement, it could truly get where I want it to be. It's a bike that would probably suit your needs, your everyday needs or your adventuring needs, for a pretty good budget, for a very good fuel consumption. On average, I total 3.5 liters per 100 kilometers riding normally, meaning sometimes I accelerate pretty strongly, sometimes I'm slowing down for city riding and things like that. So normal riding, no limitation whatsoever, 3.5 liters per 100 kilometers. That's very good because this is very inexpensive in terms of fuel every time you use it. So that's it. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and I'll see you on the road. Bye.